Our group's media product follows and develops the conventions of the genre. Our genre is a hybrid between thriller and horror, as it has conventions of both. This meant that we were making our media products. This allowed us to add different conventions from horror and thriller. For our film intro, we used several conventions from the horror genre. For example, a common theme in horror is a dark atmosphere, which we created by low-key lighting, which is produced in the editing stage of the film, as well as the suspense from the music and sound effects, which we added. We also added the bit where the protagonist is facing death or danger. We also used several conventions from the thriller genre. For example, there was a mystery feeling to the video. The protagonist and the antagonist may battle themselves and each other, but not just on a physical level, but on a mental one as well. For example, when dreaming.
This is the contact sheet for our opening sequence. The first frame or picture is our brand name in the title sequence. We decided to have the title sequence first, as the text in the entire film isn't cluttered with people's names.
The font that we chose was called Big Noodle Titling. We use this type of font as it gives off a dark, scary feel to it, and it doesn't have any fancy writing. It is also very simple with the shape it gives. We found it on thefont.com, which is a really good font site to find fonts for any type of category. We also added a dark instrumental song to give the viewer a scared feeling when they watch the opening sequence. In our title sequence, we made the video to be in the clouds. We had the inspiration from all the Harry Potter openings. This fits the conventions of horror and thriller, as the dark colours of the clouds foreshadows the events of the future of the opening sequence, and something bad may happen in the future of the opening sequence. The second frame we chose is at the end of the title sequence. We decided to have our main title in our title sequence because it gives the atmosphere in the movie and gives the viewer to think about what the title means when they are watching the whole opening sequence. To make our title sequence scary and eerie, we had our text to have a glow effect in black. This makes the title to look good rather than having the text without doing anything at all. This fits the convention of horror as it makes the text alive and distorted.
The third frame we had is at the start of the opening sequence. We used an established shot in this scene. The third frame is to represent our costume and the background. It is of the playground and the teenager sitting on the swing. We made our actor wear a hoodie as we wanted the actor to look like a teenager. And that is our target audience. It also helps the audience to understand who is who. This fits the conventions of a horror, as the clothing of the villain fits the horror conventions, as it makes the villain unknown and dark.
Fourth frame is to represent our types of transitions. An example of this is of the camera zooming into the actor's eyes. We have many different types of transitions that are all different. We had the inspiration of BBC Sherlock Holmes, as they have really good transitions and most of them are different. We used many types of transitions so that the viewer isn't bored if it's just fade-ins and fade-outs. We added a zoom into the eye shot and some other transitions that fits into the video to fit the conventions of horror. We also had inspiration of the fade-in from Harry Potter, The Order of the Phoenix, when Arthur Weasley gets attacked by the snake and you get the view of the snake.
fifth and sixth frame is to represent our angles of our shots. We used a wide range of shots in our film, such as establishing shot, mid-shot, long shots, close-ups, over-the-shoulder shots and tracking shots. Without using these shots, our opening sequence will not look as good. This fits the conventions of horror and thriller, as for the establishing shot, it sets the scene and tells you where the person is and if they are in a dark place or if they're in a field, etc. We use close-up shots to see the facial expressions of the character.
The seventh frame is to represent our editing skills. In our group we had a lot of experience at editing, so we knew how to create good effective effects onto our opening sequence, and all of them worked. We had the effect at the start where you see the villain's eyes looking at the protagonist. We also had another one at the end of the dream sequence, which ends the dream sequence. We also added 3D tracking onto the text when the protagonist received a text. We had these types of editing as it fits the conventions of horror because the scene is very sudden and makes the user jumpy. We had our colour correction to be dark and moody, to also fit the conventions of horror. We also add a vignette around the borders so you can see like fade on the edges to make the character closed in his own world.
The eighth frame is to represent our ways of editing and why we did it to fit our conventions. In our group we decided to make the viewer to be more engaged with the video by having small things in the video, which makes the video better. Our inspiration for the editing is BBC Sherlock Holmes, the text out of the phone, the transitions, etc. And some of the aspects of the Hunger Games when the protagonist is in the arena at the start and the scene is... An example of this is the person who created the text effects, like in the BBC TV series Sherlock. He created a mask around the text so that the viewer only focuses on that. He creates a 3D effect to the text so it looks like it is coming out of the phone. This makes the video more eerie and fits the conventions of a thriller because it gives the mystery feel as you don't know who sent the text message to him.
Our film would be aimed at working or middle class people. We have presented this through the use of setting and where we filmed our opening sequence. Also, we have presented it in the way the protagonist is dressed. He is dressed in jeans and a jumper, which indicates that he isn't well off, therefore he is classed as working class. Our protagonist is Asian. This challenges the stereotype of Asians being the bad guy in films. The age of people who would view our production would be 18 to 30. The age range is represented through the use of clothing and the setting of where we filmed. The main protagonist is also aged around 18 to 30, so this is another way which we presented it. We also show the age range through the technology. The main protagonist has a mobile phone which indicates that he is younger, as most young people have mobile phones. No females were used in our opening sequence. This confirms the stereotype that men are stronger than women. This is shown by the fact that the protagonist and the villain are both male. We see no female during the opening sequence. The sexuality shown in our opening sequence is heterosexual. This is shown by the masculine role as a survivor, which my protagonist is. This confirms the stereotype that men are seen as masculine.
The media institutions that might distribute our media product would be 20th Century Fox and Lionsgate. I think that these would be the best institutions for distributing our media products due to the fact that they have distributed films like Cabin in the Woods, You're Next and The Haunting in Connecticut. Also, 20th Century Fox would be best for distributing our film due to the fact that they have distributed films such as The Omen and Abraham Lincoln the Vampire Slayer. These film institutes have distributed horrors that are focused on our target audience and follow the conventions of horror, such as a dark atmosphere.
When creating our media product, we did some research and we looked into different genres and what would appeal to certain age groups. In the end, we felt that a horror or thriller appealed to a more younger audience, so we had the intentions of making it suitable to a younger audience. Our media product is aimed at 18 to 13-year-olds. One of the main reasons we chose to target our audience at this is that during our research, most of our questionnaires were answered by that target group. When planning, we looked into what themes and issues would interest our audience. We looked at popular horrors and thrillers that our target audience enjoyed. As the age range of our product is a similar age to my group, we found it easier to find out what people liked and disliked. We had a rough idea of what kind of horrors and thrillers our audience would enjoy. We feel that the editing and effects we have put into our media product will not only target a specific stereotype, but will be enjoyed by a range of people by the age group. We have made our media product so that even if some people are not massive fans of horrors and thrillers, they would still enjoy the film. We made our media product so that it attracts both male and female. Even though our main characters are both male, we feel that females would enjoy the opening sequence just as much because it isn't that scary or frightening. However, it would probably appeal and draw more to males.
The way we attracted our audience was to use a teenage Asian male as the protagonist in a middle-class area, therefore aiming the product towards that audience, although using an Asian male as the protagonist goes against the conventions of horror. Compared to the movie poster of horror films such as the one shown on screen, and compared to what conventions we have followed, they are opposite, therefore bringing in a different type of audience.
When we created our media product, we used many different types of technology, such as the Apple Mac computer and the Adobe Suite package, which we took advantage of so we can make our video look more professional. The Adobe Suite package was created especially for Apple Macs, so we could render our videos like really fast, and usually on a normal PC it will take like 10 times as longer. We use Adobe After Effects to create our entire video, such as title sequence and our scenes, as Adobe After Effects is the most reliable at video rendering and is the most powerful editing software in the world. It has plugins that outflaws Premiere Pro and is the most superior one out of the two. Also, on After Effects it is a lot more versatile, and if you can't do a scene, then there's many ways of doing it. We also used Photoshop to create our brand logo. This program was easy to learn and to get used to. Without Photoshop, we couldn't make our logo to look good. On screen, you will see how we made our logo. When we used the editing software, we learnt how to add parts of the clip to the timeline in the order we wanted it to. However, I realised that some of the clips I had were not the right thing that fit into the thriller conventions. This meant that we had to reshoot a big part of my film, but it taught me that you had to get the right shots when editing. Because when certain ones don't work, they can ruin your whole film. I also learnt how to add the music. In some of my clips the lighting was a bit too dark, so I learnt how to brighten them using advanced editing tools, which I've never used before. So I didn't have to reshoot a lot of my film like I had already done before. When we used the editing software, we learnt how to add parts of the clip to the timeline in the order we wanted it to. However, I realised that some of the clips I had were not the right thing that fit into the thriller conventions. This meant that we had to reshoot a big part of my film, but it taught me that you had to get the right shots when editing. Because when certain ones don't work, they can ruin your whole film. I also learnt how to add the music. In some of my clips the lighting was a bit too dark, so I learnt how to brighten them using advanced editing tools, which I've never used before. So I didn't have to reshoot a lot of my film like I had already done before. So creating our brand logo was quite easy. So we made our width and height to 1000 each. We then go on to File, Place, and then click on our picture. We found a picture on Google Images, as we didn't have enough time to actually create our wolf. We then use the ellipse tool to make the circle around the wolf. And then we put the background to white. We then went on to right-clicked on blending options and then stroke, which makes an outline, making the lines a lot bigger. I then reshaped the circle so that it fits precisely onto the logo, and then once I was happy with that, I rubbed out the wolf that was outside, the part of the wolf that was outside the circle. As you can see here, I'm rubbing out the wolf.
Looking back at the primary task, I feel that I have learnt better ways of editing, ways of making the movie look better, and ways of making the movie flow. Also, since the filming of the primary task, I have learnt the different conventions for different film types such as horror. Since the primary task, I have learned many different ways to edit the movie and the different effects we could use, such as finding more efficient ways to edit the film. Since the primary task, I have learned how to use After Effects and Photoshop in a more advanced way. Since learning how to use such programs, I've also learned how to chroma key so that we are able to do our green screen for the evaluation.
This video shows you how we created our eye transition. First, we placed our first scene. So our first scene was the camera zooming into the actor's eyes. We then went onto the timeline and stopped where we wanted the zoom in. So we zoomed in like 3/4 in, and then we went on to scale, which makes the clip bigger or smaller, and we used the keyframe option, which changes the size whenever we want it to. So at first we made it to 100%, and then once we found out where we want it to zoom in, we increase the scale to around 400, I think 400, and then which makes the zoom in effect. We also clicked on the motion blur, I think, the motion blur, which basically increases the effect of the zoom in. And we also did the scale thing to the position as well. So once we've done that, we placed the second scene that we want, so the next transition, the scene that we want the transition to end. So we use this one where the actor is in the dream sequence. And then once we've done that, we found an eye image on Google Images, and we placed an eye on the entire clip. Once we've done that, we used the mask tool and masked around the eye pupil. We didn't want the eyelids and such like that and stuff like that, because it didn't look as good. So we used the actual eyelid itself. Once we'd done that, we increased the mask feather to around 230, so the edges are like more feathered out, and it doesn't look solid around the edges. Once we've done that, I made it fit to the composition. And then we use the masking tool again to take the pupils out of the picture, so that the viewer can see what's happening in the scene. We also feathered this because we wanted it to not look like solid. And then so to make the blinking effect, the blinking effect was quite easy, because all we had to do was make the opacity go up and down, up and down. So at the start we made it go to 0% the opacity, and then a few seconds later, or half a seconds later, we made the opacity to go to 100. We also did this to the actual clip as well. And there we have it. This is how we made it. And we'll show you the finished effect. We'll show you the draft. Oh shit.